Putting this football staff turnover into perspective is absolute insanity. But first, Steve Lutz gets his opportunity to begin Big 12 play against the number 15 ranked Houston Cougars in the legendary GIA.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayOState. Today, we get to roll right into the conversation of Cowboy basketball and Steve Lutz sitting at an 8-3 record, which Steve Lutz is admittedly slightly disappointed in, which we find is a breath of fresh air. Take on the number 15 ranked Houston Cougars inside the legendary Gallagher-Iba Arena. For our Houston Cougar fans, the legendary hardwood floor that's been the same since 1938 now gets to begin the Steve Lutz era inside GIA. And as we've discussed previously before the season ever started, my primary objective for Steve Lutz was just be more competitive, be more old school, more Eddie Sutton-like, and then defend the home court. Whatever happened on the road, we would take it with a grain of salt and move forward. Because the biggest deficiency, in my opinion, was the fact that Mike Boynton would not take care of Gallagher-Iba Arena properly. He could bring in the best recruits in the country. We literally had multiple top 10 recruiting classes. It just didn't really amount to much. Seeing those same guys in the NBA is a little bit frustrating, but nonetheless, it welcomes us into the Steve Lutz era. Inside Gallagher-Iba for Big 12 play. And who better to start with than one of the heavy hitters, not only of the Big 12, but of the country. Of course, you need to go check out the episode with Parker Ainsworth, where we kind of break down some of the players to pay attention to from the Houston and O-State perspective. You guys already know what we are. We're a defensive-heavy team that likes to be gritty and tough and keep the action going 24/7 to apply pressure enough to make you make mistakes. That's our bread and butter. We're not going to be a team that's going to go off shooting on a regular basis. There will be some times where we get hot shooting, and those are the days that we can beat anybody. Hopefully, one of those days is today against the Houston Cougs. And more importantly, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to cover this is because during the Mike Boynton era, there was times where Oklahoma State would show up and show out inside Gallagher-Iba Arena. The difference was he couldn't get it done. Even this previous season, there was a few games where we'd put 10, 11,000 butts in the stands inside Gallagher-Iba, and they always equaled losses. He did not respect the floor enough to take care of it enough. Again, if you have an abysmal record on the road, we can kind of live with it. But that arena, the house that Ed Gallagher and Henry Iba and Eddie Sutton and John Smith built, deserves to be packed out quite a bit. Now, thus far this year, the attendance has been okay. It hasn't been quite as good as wrestling, but that's because there's some anticipation with the wrestling program to be competing for a national title within the next 24 months, if not sooner. Penn State probably has this particular season locked down, but the battle for second is squarely upon us. Basketball could be completely different, but here's to hoping that the chaotic football season is equaled in basketball. I think in basketball, because the amount of games and some of the non-conference action that you do get, you get a little bit more leeway. By and large, if you are a 500 team or hovering right around 500 in league play in the Big 12, you're going to get in. Getting 7, 8, even potentially 9 teams in to the dance isn't completely out of the realm of possibility. So all you have to do is be a functioning middle-of-the-ground team to get yourself an opportunity for March Madness, and that's really what we're all looking for. If anybody said before the season started that we might begin the year 3-8 instead of 8-3, I don't know that you would have had a significant amount of arguments. But here we are, sitting with a pretty substantial record. We're already doing better on the road than Mike Boynton did, even at home. So now this is a big moment, not only for Steve Lutz, but Cowboy country to show up a little bit more. Putting 5,000, 6,000 in the stands has not been too bad, but this is the time where we need to uptick it a little bit more. We need to get as many butts in the seats to show Steve Lutz the same things that we were able to show Travis Ford and Mike Boynton. Now, Travis Ford, in his defense, He would lose 5-6 games in a row, especially ones that you shouldn't. And then he would knock off number 2 ranked KU inside Gallagher-Iba Arena. So you kind of got some of the good with the bad. And the good was so good that when it was good, it kept extending his lifeline on the sidelines in Stillwater. But Steve Lutz needs to have that feeling of what it could be like if you put a lot of butts in the stands in Gallagher-Iba Arena. Eddie Sutton has said it. Doug Gottlieb has said it. There's plenty of players in the past that have said it. When Gallagher-Iba is rocking, in and of itself is worth 8 to 10 points. We haven't got behind Steve Lutz yet because we're super early into the season. This could be that opportunity. But here's the test. If Steve Lutz can get 8,000-9,000 people in the stands for this ball game, and you get the W, or it's an overtime style of thriller, and you show a certain level of fight that we haven't seen in quite some time, you're going to do yourself a lot of favors. It is a what have you done for me lately industry, business, call it what you want to call it, and we haven't done very good. So lately, there's not a lot to get excited about from a fan perspective. But yet again, last season, there was a couple games where we did pack it out for the most part, and it still did not equal what we all showed up for. And because of that, I think a decent amount of fans are pretty dejected on wanting to travel to go to Gallagher-Iba Arena. I've said it the last couple of years, so I'll say it again. There's more than 13,000 people in Stillwater, America that should be able to go to the game. And the ticket prices aren't crazy. One thing that we could potentially do is do some kind of like New Year's style of deal so we can get that place packed out. But even if we do not get the 9,000-10,000, that would be ideal for this scenario. If we do find a way to shock the world and somehow beat Houston, which I'm not saying is likely, the spread's like 12.5. That might be a little bit rich because of it being in Gallagher-Iba if we can get a decent amount of butts in the stands. But if we do, in fact, win this ball game, if you're Steve Lutz, your expectations for how Gallagher-Iba should look for the next game after that should increase. And I'm hoping that just like with wrestling, when you're seeing a very, very good product on the mat, you're getting fans to show up in 6, 7, 8,000 seats. If we can do it for wrestling, we should be able to do it for basketball. Now, of course, I understand the sentiment of I will start showing up and I'll start traveling from Oklahoma City, Tulsa, this, that, and the other, whenever we have a product that we know is going to be worth the travel. And we're not going to be a crazy high-flying team. Even some of the down years of Mike Boynton, you could have expectations of watching somebody go absolutely nuts and drop 30, 40 points. But maybe you're not going to get that out of this ball club because we don't really have a 30-point, 40-point scoring dude. Outside of guys like Marcellus Chichi Avery and Bryce Thompson, those guys could get hot enough to kind of make those numbers somewhat possible. But if nothing else, look at the record now. Look at what it's been under Mike Boynton, where we have, I don't want to say less talent, but on paper, athletically speaking, we do not have as much talent as we did under Travis Ford or Mike Boynton. But that's okay. This is a hard-nosed, gritty, defensive team. All of these dudes that Steve Lutz brought in via the transfer portal, none of them were shooting guys. They were all primarily defensive guys that were facilitators to some degree, that got rebounds, got assists, got steals, got blocks, but none of them were big-time shooters. I think that was supposed to be designated for Bryce Thompson, which is, again, why we do hold out some hope that occasionally guys like Chichi Avery and Bryce Thompson can get hot, because there's going to be games where Abu Usman can definitely keep us in games. There's going to be games that Robert Jennings can kind of stay involved and keep us tight. Jamiron Keller is a spark that everybody needs to pay attention to. Khalil Brantley is probably the best pure facilitator we've had over the last 5-6 years. Like Avery Anderson, good point guard to some degree, very good scorer, good at getting in the lane, but the facilitating part wasn't always there. You have to go back to like a Byron Eaton, John Lucas style of guy, or maybe even a Marcus Smart or a Cade Cunningham to get that level of distribution that Khalil Brantley offers. Now, Khalil Brantley does have some limitations as well, but then you have Arturo Dean, who came in last season leading the country in steals, and as a role player at Oklahoma State is already well on his way to kind of establishing himself in the Big 12 as a guy you have to be scared of when he comes off the bench. That is what it is. We are where we are. I know I can't speak English a decent amount of the time, but we need to try to show Steve Lutz that if you bring us an 8-3 ball club and you're taking on a top 15 team inside the historic arena, we'll give you the support. All you have to do is give us in return is a good product to be proud of or some W's. And I can tell you, if you get a W against the top 15 Houston team, that should catapult the expectations from here on out to put more butts in the seats than we have in a little bit. It needs to mirror wrestling, at least to some degree, numerically, because the respect factor is going to be earned. And this is going to be on the national stage. So it could be earned tonight. Speaking of earning, you don't want your hard earnings going to waste. And if you're unable to track your spending and your subscriptions, it does make it a little bit more difficult to make sure that you're not spending unnecessarily. That's where Rocket Money comes into play. They're going to help you find subscriptions you forgot about that you were paying for, sometimes even twice. That's definitely happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. We've all had subscriptions that we didn't even realize we were still paying for. And Rocket Money makes it so easy for you to track all of them down. It's like having a personal assistant helping you with your finances 24/7. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, helping customers save about $740 a year when using all of the premium features. The best thing that you can do for yourself is get on the subscription tracker. It's going to be used to cancel services that you don't want anymore. And you're going to be able to save a ton no matter what it is. Their goals feature is going to be able to help automatically set aside money for your future, my future. There's no more stressing out about budgeting all the time, every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go there today to make sure you don't have finances going astray. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we get to kick off a little bit more into the football conversation once again, because this has already been an unprecedented move by Mike Gundy, Board of Regents, Dr. Schrum, AD Chad Weiberg, whatever conglomerate made all of this stuff happen. I think we can all agree this was necessary, and we're extremely excited about it. But just whenever you kind of stop to put it into context, considering the Oklahoma State historically has been a team, and we talked about it last year, Oklahoma State and Utah being teams that have massive advantages when it comes to the coaching staff and retention, and having dudes stick around for 12 years, 14 years, 19 years, 17 years, and how beneficial it could be. But it can also go the other way, and unfortunately, we experience the other side of that coin where you have too much comfortability, you have too much in retention, and you have too much of the old guard that kind of, doesn't understand the new landscape entirely and how to fit within it. And it didn't go well, right? I mean, we all saw what it was. So to go from the second most returning staffs in America and the second most returning team in America with the first or second most roster numbers coming back in America. Instead of that, we're now on the other side of the coin, the completely other side of the coin. And of course, I mean, we all know about some of the everyday names, but when you put it in perspective, it's really mind-blowing. And it has to get most of us excited, in my personal opinion. So we know Casey Dunn is out, the offensive coordinator that literally spent almost 2 decades roaming the sidelines in Stillwater in multiple roles. He cut his teeth being a wide receiver guy. We put wide receivers in the NFL on a basically yearly basis, especially when he was coordinating all the wide receivers. Now, his transition up to offensive coordinator, it didn't work out. Now we bring in Doug Meacham. Is Doug Meacham the big, crazy Grand Slam hire that maybe Todd Grantham defensively was? Maybe not. But as we've seen some of the players that he's brought in, especially most recently with Hoss Haney, I think it does help us understand that when you connect the past of what Meacham was able to provide for Oklahoma State back in the heyday, when we were winning those 10-win seasons and we had the David Gliddens and the Trayson Wallaces of the world, that builds a lot of anticipation, especially now with the guys that he's brought in. Then you also, at the quarterback spot, you have Tim Rattay out. A lot of guys love him. A lot of recruits stayed because of him. But now you have Kevin Johns coming in, a dude who has a long history of being successful at multiple stops, also being a coordinator, working for legends like Coach Bro and Mike Elko along the way. He had Hoss Haney committed to Duke at one point in time, so this is yet another reason this connection made sense. Maybe the biggest surprise of all was running backs coach John Wozniak being out, because when you look at all of the NFL running backs that have gone through Oklahoma State in the last decade, John Wozniak has a very, very heavy hand in it. But now bring in Corey Patterson, who, from all intents and purposes, is a very big get. He's a running backs dude. He's helped produce a lot of NFL guys in dating back to this time at Illinois, coming over from Purdue. He's also worked with wide receivers. And he's one of those guys that physically likes to get hands-on to teach things. And I think that's going to be huge. Offensive line. I don't think we've ever had two offensive line coaches at the same time, which obviously is beyond exciting. Charlie Dickey's out. The legend that cut his teeth at K-State just couldn't quite figure it out. In Stillwater, he had one big season helping out Ollie Gordon. But other than that, it didn't work out. Now you bring in Cooper Bassett and Andrew Mitchell, both former Cowboys, one from Utah State, one from New Mexico. And Andrew Mitchell's already bringing offensive linemen with him. And New Mexico State might have more to provide as the weeks kind of carry on here. Then we go to tight ends coach. Out was Jason McIndoe, which never made sense. He was an offensive lineman. He coached offensive line for over a decade. Then we asked him to magically start coaching tight ends. It didn't make sense, but it is what it is. Now we have TJ Lavea coming in from Utah State. This dude has put a lot of dudes in the NFL because he spent several seasons in the NFL. He has touchdowns from Matt Ryan as an Atlanta Falcon, and now he gets to bring that expertise over to Stillwater. Of course, defensive coordinators, Brian Nardo, he is gone. His 3-3-5, it would have worked. It could have worked, maybe, possibly, but things didn't exactly fall into place. And he didn't have the personnel that he needed, but there's no way around it. Whatever limitations he was working with, the product was not good enough. It just was not going to be able to remain. Now we have Todd Grantham. I think everybody's elated simply because of the dudes that he's been able to bring in, not only in the staff, but also in the transfer portal. Defensive line, he brought in Ryan Osborne to replace Paul Randolph. And Ryan Osborne is already a guy that gets it. He's worked in the NFL with the Ravens. He's been at Michigan. He's been at Georgia. He's been at Florida, Mississippi State. His expertise is going to do absolute wonders for the defensive line, and I know that they're very excited about it. Joe Bob Clements, linebackers coach, also somewhat legendary in his time at Oklahoma State. Now we get two dudes to replace Big Joe Bob in Cap Dede and Ryan McNamara. Cap Dede has all of those connections. He's produced so many defensive backs and linebackers that have gone on to the league in the SEC. And Ryan McNamara is somebody that the young linebackers, the young guys in the room are already insanely excited about. He was making phone calls to some of the dudes on the roster as soon as he got the job. And he has a lot of these dudes extremely pumped up. So this is yet another win because McNamara also has a pedigree of working with defensive backs. So he's going to be able to bring some extra layers to this defense. Speaking of quarterbacks, Tim Duffy is out. Jules Montanar is in. This is another dude that was around for almost 2 decades, that was very productive, or over a decade, for Oklahoma State for some point in time. But Jules Montanar is just on a completely another level. The list of guys that he has put into the league single-handedly, we just covered the other day, it'll blow your ever-loving mind. Out for safeties is Dan Hammersmith. This one hurts my heart, just like Brian Nardo hurts my heart, but it is what it is. We are where we are. Greg Brown gets upgraded from an analyst, and we also brought in Kevy Thompson. Kevy Thompson has a lot of connections with the Grantham, Osborne, Cap Dede, all of that going back for the last 8 to 10 years together. And then Greg Brown's kind of worked his way up through being an analyst and clearly has more than enough support to make this transition and get in with all of the staff that we have coming on. This is an unprecedented time as Oklahoma State fans because we're used to the same guys coming back over and over and over and over and over. And we were so predispositioned to view it as a necessity and a benefit. And it was for a very, very long time until college football changed and recruiting changed and everything around it just kind of got shuffled around. We had to shuffle around the entirety of the staff. And then when you take into consideration the players as well, right? We knew we were going to have 30 plus some odd, seniors and guys getting into the draft. You knew you were going to have a couple of handfuls of transfers. And then we didn't foresee all of the coaches basically going. The only people that are coming back are Sean Snyder for special teams. And of course, the big beast, Rob Glass in strength and conditioning. Everybody else is new. So when you take away the graduating guys, the NFL draft guys, the transfer guys, and all of the coaches, and at 135 players, that's like 60% of the quote-unquote production, both on the field and on the sidelines and in the booth. That's all gone. Now, if you cut that down to 105 players, then you're talking, 70-ish percent, 75% of your staff and your players that all kind of helped encapsulate that 135-man roster. That's all gone. Like 70% of that is gone. The brand new nature of this, it should have us all excited because we saw the other side of it. All of the old heads, the 15-year guys, 12-year guys, 9-year guys, 19-year guys, all of the returning seniors, 6th-year, 7th-year seniors, a lot of COVID dudes. It didn't work. Complacency and bad habits kind of snuck in. Maybe you could say laziness obviously was part of it as well. It didn't work. So now we're the complete other side of the program. And I'm all in for it. I'm also all in for what we have going on the diamond. There was something that just came out the other day. I couldn't find it, or I thought I had a screenshot of it. Nonetheless, it had Josh Holliday ranked as number 8 in the top 10 coaches right now in college baseball. And although I thought that was a little bit high, when you go back and look at the number of wins and the rankings and the regionals hosted, it does make a whole lot of sense for Josh Holliday to kind of be up in that upper echelon of the top coaches in the country. Financially speaking, he's like 16th highest paid, which I think does make some sense. He has the ability to get up towards the top. The 2025 recruiting class is currently ranked 7th in the country. And whenever you look at what that looks like, okay, this is talk about murderer's row, the top recruiting classes in baseball right now, 2025 class. LSU, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, Miami, Vanderbilt. That is the who's who, the murderer's row of all of college baseball. And, of course, we fit right in that. What we don't have is the super regional stuff to go alongside of it. The Big 12 titles are nice, whether they be, regular season or the Big 12 tournament championships. And I think that's largely what's keeping Josh Holliday afloat to some of the disgruntlement within the Oklahoma State fan base, because the expectations are to not only host regionals, but make supers. Like, we're not overly greedy. We're not saying we need to be in Omaha every single year. The Gary Ward era is a little bit behind us, but the expectation should be to host supers every single year. That's why O-Rate was built. And when you have the number 7 ranked recruiting class in the country right now, followed by having a pretty good class this previous season as well, right hovering in that top 25 range, you should be able, in my opinion, to kind of get everybody on the same page for what this next round of Cowboy baseball should look like. Now, out of this last class, we had almost 20 dudes. We only bring, 15, 16 of them to campus because Cash Mayfield, first round draft selection. He obviously signed his major league deal, as did Braylon Doty and Dowdy in the first round as well. Sir Jamison Jones, he was drafted and signed the deal as a catcher. But Garrett Scholl, 6'1", 205 pounds, out of Enid, Oklahoma, did not. He's going to be a Cowboy. Another individual to pay attention to from Enid High School is Keon Young. That's a kid that I coached for some years. And he was so talented that Keon played multiple grades above his level, and he went on the road and he traveled with us all over the Midwest because he was just that good. So it's no surprise to see him up there as one of the top players, not only in the country, but obviously in the state of Oklahoma. Pay attention to him. We got his Enid buddy, Garrett Scholl. We also got Matthew Brown out of Carlisle, Ontario, Canada, who's another individualist, 6'5", 230 pounds, that was projected to be drafted. Did not do it. Noah Welch was drafted out of Manitowoc, Wisconsin. The 6'1", 205-pound right-hand pitcher is going to be a Cowboy, even though he was drafted by the Brewers. Then you got shortstop Brock Thompson, 6'1", 175 out of California. Ethan Lund, 6'4", 205 pitcher out of Fishers, Indiana. Cale Sutteroth, left-hand pitcher, Lone Grove, Ardmore, Oklahoma. Banner Island, second baseman, 5'9", 160 out of California. Jed Hope, right-hand pitcher, 6'4", 210 out of Bixby. Caleb Hoover, 6'3", 215, first baseman out of Heath, Texas. Braylon Brooks, shortstop, 5'9", 180, Tuttle, Oklahoma. Brex Caldwell, right-hand pitcher, 6'3", 220 from Shady Point, from the state of Oklahoma. Bo Farish, right-hand pitcher, 6'2", 180, Carl Albert, Oklahoma. Thomas Lee, catcher, 5'11", 190, Shadow Hills, California. Stormy Rhodes, right-hand pitcher, 6'4", 190, Kerrville, Texas. And Parker Reese, another catcher, 6'3", 165 out of Princeton, Texas. That is the group of dudes coming in. And what is already projected as number 18 ranked preseason team, and one projection, we're number 21 in another projection preseason. This has to be a year that we make a run at Omaha. It has to happen. It needs to be that way. And then on the flip side of it, from a softball standpoint, the Cowgirls have a lot going for them. We brought in right around the top 10, number 11 ranked class in the country. Obviously, this year's looking very comparable to having another top 10 class. We should begin the season within the top 10, probably even within the top 5. But this previous class, we got JL Austin, number 3 ranked outfielder in America from Owasso. Gabby Castillo, she was a 4-year letter winner, batted .419 with 44 hits, 4 bombs, and 26 RBIs. She was 23 and 2024 Offensive Player of the Year and 3-time team MVP out of Richmond, Texas. Then you have Montgomery Henderson. This is a power threat through and through that can launch bombs all day, every day, with a .434 batting average, 13 home runs, 53 RBIs, won a home run derby championship up here in Colorado. Libby Jaquez out of Moore, Oklahoma, the number 47 ranked prospect in America. Aubrey Jones, Gaylord, Michigan, number 63 ranked prospect in the country. Elle McCloskey, number 34 ranked prospect in America, followed by Michaela Smith. Michaela Smith is out of Needville, Texas, and she possesses speed, power, movement, the ability to get down the line and create havoc. Watching her travel all over the country has allowed her to kind of put herself on display with a 2.84 ERA, 149 Ks, and just 120.2 innings pitched, while also earning defensive MVP recognition. The expectations for both Cowboys and Cowgirls should be making massive runs. We need to host a super regional, or at least get to a super regional at the bare minimum. And the Cowgirls, we now have the expectation of having massive classes, but also getting to the equivalent of Omaha in baseball, which is Oklahoma City. The College Softball World Series is where we belong every single year. And it's almost been written in stone that we will be there once again. Is this the team that's going to be good enough to challenge for a title? We did bring in Ruby Malin out of Washington, one of the biggest pitchers in the country by far. We also brought in Crandall from Baylor, who's one of the top pitchers in America. We have a lot already going for us. This might be a year that we go 4 deep at pitcher. We haven't had that, I don't think, ever. Quality depth on the mound to go 4 deep. We thought we had some capabilities last year, but Kyra Aycock dealt with some injuries. This is going to be a good year. It's going to be a good squad for both. The expectations are high for both. All right, go cheer on the Cowboys versus the Houston Cougs in hoops. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing, dislike if you don't. More importantly, my podcast people out there, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter, fountain fun to do. Hit the stars, leave a review, do what you do. Later, my taters.